Hi, thanks for tuning in to QuickTalk, the MedTech Startup Podcast. I'm Axel Strombergson, Vice President at Viva MedTech. In today's episode, we're going to talk about business planning and business strategy, and more specifically, how to include your commercialization strategy early on in your journey to set you up for later success, such as being ready when you get that FDA clearance. With me, I have Tom Ross, and he's been in the medical device industry for over 30 years, and he's also the founder and CEO of the company, The Device Doctor. Hi, Tom. Welcome to Quick Talk. It's a pleasure and honor to have you here today. As you know, we are going to talk about business planning and business strategy today, and more specifically, discuss how to include commercialization strategy early on in your startup journey. Before we kind of jump in and talk about that, please go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background and also talk about what you guys do at the Device Doctor.
Sure. Thank you very much, Axel, for the opportunity. I'm Tom Ross. I am currently in consulting mode with thedevicedoctor.com. Early in my career, I came up through product management and marketing management, always with device companies, and eventually had responsibility for both sales and marketing. And about 30 years ago, moved here to the Bay Area to have general management or senior management responsibility within startups. I've been in critical care markets. I've been in orthopedics for quite a few years, pain management, and a lot of time in catheters, neurovascular catheters especially. My most recent experience on a full-time job was in orthodontics and orthodontic materials. I got into consulting mode because I like helping small companies. I like being within small companies, and I have been pleased to offer help with sales and marketing issues, fundraising, or investor communication issues, and anything in between. And commercialization is certainly a very important part of my past and preparing for commercialization and plans.
That's great. Yeah, you're definitely a good fit for today's topic. Awesome. So let's start from the itty bitty beginning here for a startup. So, getting off the ground and building your business plan and then setting up your business strategy and then start communicating that to investors. But let's talk about how to then include that later stage, the commercialization strategy thinking into that early. How would you approach that, and why do you think that is of importance?
I do think it's an important topic because so many founder groups come either from technical backgrounds or from clinical backgrounds. And so the focus is how to develop the product and get the technology working, or how to get regulatory clearance for the concept and the product. And so many times commercialization is left off the plan because it's another milestone beyond where the early focus is. Commercialization is so important because that is what's going to lead your company to the success that it needs, the launch of the product and the recognition by purchasing departments. Very important to include in your plan early, and keep that in mind, and have an entire economic plan for your product in mind from the start.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of my own experience, being with a startup where we were so focused on getting that FDA clearance, we kind of just focused on how to talk about the product in terms of your intended use and your claims to get through the FDA. But then after that, kind of recognizing that the claims that we had achieved wasn't very powerful from a commercialization perspective, right? So I think it's really important to kind of recognize that getting through the FDA or getting a CE mark is just a milestone towards commercial success, right? So I think what you're saying there, kind of bringing that later stage thinking early on, helps really to kind of think through how can we talk about the device once it's in the market and what is going to sell it, right?
Yes.
So any other thoughts on that in terms of like the language that you need for commercialization versus language for clearance, and how to kind of think about that?
Sure. Well, I think investigations with your potential customer group are so key for actually deciding what it is the product needs to do, who's going to make the purchase decision eventually when that product gets on the market, and who's going to pay for it. In
Right.
many cases, those are two different groups within the clinical structure or the hospital structure. So that there's an entire economic plan or economic model that needs to be followed and build out of eventually, how are you going to get the product supplied to the company? Is it going to be manufactured internally or a manufacturing partner for outsourcing? And then the next step after the product is built, who's going to sell it? How will it be distributed? And what are the requirements there? All of that goes into the structure for making a product successful commercially. And then, of course, after planning for those things, there are a huge number of resources that are going to be required, either outside resources, outside help and fractional people helping the company, or building the human resources of the company internally and building the infrastructure internally so that the company can produce an economic success on its own.
Right, right. No, that's good. As you talk and kind of think about almost like what you just said here, also like kind of translating that into like a business plan. You basically have different type of section that cover what you talked about. So the economic model, manufacturing supply chain, sales and distribution of the device, and then also your HR plan and HR strategy to kind of grow that. So it's kind of interesting to kind of like just what you say and then kind of how to take that into your actual business plan and laid it out in different type of sections. So that's really helpful. Kind of going a little bit further into then the journey of a startup and getting closer to, say, an FDA clearance or a CE mark, and you have your plan lined up, and so you kind of know what to do. But as you're getting closer to that point in time when you get sort of that thumbs up of approval, how can a startup then start getting ready and gear up to be like ready to launch once they get that clearance or approval?
Well, all these issues really require the company to be looking outside of its own borders, right? The seeking customer advice or payer advice about what the economic model should be or how the product will become a commercial success. All of those things require the company to be closely in touch with all these stakeholders that are in the economic model outside of the company, especially. So what we're really talking about is a pivot to commercialization from internally focused development, or if you want to call it an identity shift from a concentrated development company or technically focused company to how to get this product, a company that is focused on how to get the product sold and marketed, which involves everyone outside the company. And of course, as I mentioned, the human resources that are required to accomplish those things. You're very smart, I think, to have this talk focused on planning, but then, of course, the planning has to roll into executing and implementing, and that takes people, either fractional or outside people, but especially building the infrastructure and people resources that are inside the company as well.
Right, right. No, no, that's a really good way to look at it, right? That you know, speaking about that identity crisis too, you kind of go from that early R&D startup to actually then grow up and become like a medical device manufacturer that now soon will have products in commercial distribution. So I think that's a really good way to look at it. You kind of go from one identity to another identity, and I think part of that is that you almost double your organization if you think about, you go
Could
from
be.
like R&D focus to now
Yes.
everything else, right? And that includes, of course, your quality management system, what we do at Viva, but everything else in terms of the resources that you need and just to be able to be getting the product out the door and manage everything in commercial distribution. So yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Another, of course, important piece to be able to pull this off in addition to having the plan and then start executing to the plan, to be able to do that is, of course, capital, right? So let's talk a little bit about how startups can then prepare and align their fundraising strategy with this point in time when they are at the ready, they get that clearance, and now they just needs to push forward and execute, right? So give me your thoughts in terms of how to think about fundraising and time that with that stage of the company.
Sure. What I think so many smaller or less experienced founder groups don't realize that the capital demands, the cash required to move into commercialization and be successful with it is actually quite high. So to build that plan early on, what it's going to take to commercialize your product early on will be very important to talk to your investors about, and then keep them aware of what's happening when you need the capital, how your regulatory clearance is progressing, and when you're going to need the funds. And keep track of that, keep investors aware, keep looking for investors. You'll always be in fundraising mode. And so I think that is extremely important to be ready to fund that commercial advancement.
Right. No, that's great thinking. Awesome. Well, Tom, getting to the end here of our conversation. Of course, this has been pretty, very helpful, very insightful. For our audience that want to kind of learn more about this topic, and also how to get in touch with you guys at the Device Doctor, please share a little bit some thoughts around further reading, further
Sure.
videos, what it is, and also how to get hold of you.
Sure, there are a lot of materials out there online and at business schools and so on. Two books that I have found to be helpful. Now, this one I purchased the. Are we going to be able to see it? I purchased the. I purchased the Kindle version of Medical Device Fireside Chats by Justin Bushko. We're going to have to. Okay, so that is a very cleverly written book with a conversational style that Justin has built into the book, and it provides hundreds of questions that lead to making decisions and building a good business plan, especially the commercialization portion. So a very useful book. Another one I have actually the hardbound version. Are we going to be able to see that?
I think if you put it closer to your face, it's probably gonna.
Okay, let's see.
There
All
you
right.
go.
You can see it's flashing by. Sorry. Sorry about that. That's
no, what we're going to do.
Okay.
We'll put the description in.
Sure.
We put a link in the description under the video. So what book is
All right.
this?
This is a book called Innovation in Translation by Dave Ferreira.
Oh, nice.
And Dave has a very good writing style to share his experiences in several past startups, mostly successful, but his experiences that provide great learning experiences. And so it really reads like a story or a good novel. And there are advisors out there. I would say a great one is forgeimpact.org. That is a nonprofit that has advisor people available. And then also every community or every state that has a small business development center, and you can find yours at americassbdc.org. And of course, the Device Doctor, the Device Doctor, devicedoctor.com is always available for you to contact me and let's chat. And I'll see if I have other advice for you more specifically.
Awesome, that's great. And like I mentioned, we'll put the links in the description below the video on YouTube, so people can get access to the books and other resources that you share there. So thanks so much. That's really helpful. Yeah, Tom, great chatting with you as always, and thanks again for joining me here at QuickTalk today.
Okay, very happy to do it. Thanks very much, Axel.
If you enjoyed this episode of QuickTalk, hit like and subscribe. And for additional educational content, visit our website at quickvault.viva.com.